serious. How can someone be a good boss to an employee with serious mental health issues? Be results oriented. If they are giving you the quality of work you need in the right time frame, don't micromanage how they are getting it done. You might ask them in what way they work better, e.g. they might work better in a quieter area, working from home, or with more flexible hours. You will, of course, also need to extend these courtesies to the other people you supervise. We work for alot security, so really I just need them to show up on time and stay through their usually quiet, usually boring shift. Just the fact that you're asking this question puts you light years ahead of most bosses. Being accommodating goes a long way and can inspire both harder work and loyalty, if done properly. If someone is extremely depressed, your reaction can make all the difference. If you react with severity, tough love, and tell them to get off their asses and get back to work, and their mood isn't an excuse, etc., you're just going to make their depression even worse in 99% of cases. It's depressing to think the world is harsh and brutal and concerned only with productivity and making a buck. You're just reinforcing that worldview by telling them to suck it up. But if you show them unexpected kindness, it might just raise their spirits and help them see that good people exist, and it's not just some hopeless corporate dystopia out there. More than anything, be human. Realize they're human, not just a piece of equipment to push until it breaks. Is their mental illness affecting their work or their co-workers? It is affecting their work. They've been late or missed entire shifts before. They have since been written up and they are seeking help, which is very good, although it changes their schedule to be much frustrating for me to work around, but that's small potatoes at this point. That's a tough one. As someone who has had to go on FMLA leave for essentially a mental breakdown, my boss was supportive and not judgmental, but it ended up biting me in the ass to be open with him about it. When I'd make the occasional mistake, it seemed to fall into a narrative of being unreliable. I ended up quitting after an extended leave. I didn't know what to do, but obviously there needed to be a change. I don't think there's any way he could have handled it right one way or another. It probably wouldn't have affected me if he had said that's not real. Do a better job. The unfortunate reality is that a job is a job and an employee is there to perform their function to create profit. As someone in a similar position as they are, I would ask for compassion and understanding to an extent, but the last thing I want is to be a burden and cause coworkers problems with unexpected shift changes and things that end up costing the company more than I contribute. If they are causing a financial hit, that will reflect on you and bring to question your role in enabling the issues. You need to be concerned about your own livelihood. Allow for what is legally mandated by FMLA, etc. And if the limits of your compassion go beyond the financial bottom line, you should let them go. The truth is they won't be any better off underperforming at a job they don't fit, and you will be worse off at a point for sure. What I did was find a company and role that is suited to my temperament, where I excel with the occasional hiccup that my bosses understand. They may not be capable of their job right now. There is nothing you can do to change that. You can just decide if you are going to accept it or not. We don't live in a society that has ways of solving this unless you can support them financially until their health improves. Depends on the issues. Several missed shifts and no-shows. They are currently seeking help, which is good. Still want to know if I can do something as a boss to make things work better for everyone. All you can do is document the issues, sire, and give the employee a pass or two. But if the issues persist, you will have to advise them to seek coverage with disability insurance. It isn't pretty, but at the end of the day, if everyone else has to show up, so does this employee. You can absolutely care, but you are very limited as to how much you can bend the rules for a single employee. Otherwise you establish a pattern that can come back and bite you. For example, if you allow no-shows, then later attempt to terminate said employee, they can sue saying you allowed it previously, and the employee, though they were okay to no-show, and they did so with your permission, then you are on the hook for paying the state for their unemployment and lost wages. If you don't own the company and THST happens, you will be fired. Or if another employee no-shows and you attempt to terminate them, and they claim mental health issues, you are now bound to also give them the same benefits as the first employee or face a discrimination suit. And again, you will face legal liability if you are the owner, and be fired if you are not. Your company should have policy and guidelines cases like these, and the worst thing you can do is not follow them. Hook them up with an employee assistance program if you have one. Open communication to start, but you can only get so involved. If it's available, you should encourage the employee to seek a medical leave program that can allow them to take off time when they need it. Are they a good employee with poor mental health, or a bad employee with poor mental health? I once had a crew member on a feature film. Great employee, but his father died recently. Literally, it was just telling him good job, or every once in a while a bro hug, and you could see how much wind it put in his sails. On another instance, I had a crew member who would lie compulsively. He had slight Asperger's, which he said caused the lying. The first few times he apologized, and we moved on, but as it kept happening, eventually, firing him was the only option. Be sympathetic and supportive, but if it impacts your business, then they have to go. It's harsh, it sucks, but if business goes downhill, then more than just one employee will be negatively affected. If it's a transient issue, tell them their job is safe. Worrying about losing their job is the last thing they need right now. Treat them like you would if they had any other life-changing or life-threatening medical condition, because that is exactly what it is. What would you do if an employee was diagnosed with cancer? What would you do if they broke their leg? Obviously, a lot of this depends on what job they are doing, their diagnosis, their treatment, and the individual themselves. Just be understanding. If they need to take a sick day, make sure they know that it's okay. Allowing breaks is super important too. Don't make them feel like they need to keep working while having a panic attack. It's different for every person, but just being understanding and not faulting them for something out of their control goes a long way. Sit down and have a talk about how you can help them. I think it depends on what the mental health issues are. I used to work with an engineer who had serious undiagnosed and untreated mental health issues. He was smart and good at solving technical problems in his field, but he imposter syndrome or some kind of other inferiority complex. He had been in the military in Iraq, so it is possible that he also had some amount of PTSD. He was paranoid. He constantly thought that other people were working against him or trying to get him fired. On a few occasions I heard him tell stories about events I witnessed and make himself out to be a victim persecuted by upper management when nothing could have been further from the truth. He and I were in the room when an accident connected to an unrelated operation occurred, and management interviewed all witnesses, but it was determined to have been an unavoidable misunderstanding. He claimed to have been leading the operation, which is an overt lie. He had only been on the job for a couple of weeks and worked in a different department, and he claimed that he sweet-talked a senior manager into letting him keep his job, which never would have happened because he had nothing to do with the accident in the first place. I was there. The managers only asked people what had happened. He'd also get into ridiculous one-sided feuds with managers and colleges who he thought didn't respect him enough. He'd constantly shit-talk them behind their backs, and he'd be super defensive about stuff he was working on. One time he actually yelled at me for not waking him up in the middle of the night when I was on shift and he wasn't, to fix something that was obviously wrong with his system. Even though I had done it correctly. You should have called me! Exclamation mark. He was so mad that I thought he was going to hit me. He was 50 something and I wasn't even 25. People made every allowance for him, especially because he was a veteran. But he was always an unstable and weird person to work with. He invited me to his home once, and I had one of the weirdest afternoons of my life. His wife was there, but he didn't introduce me to her. Eventually, like 8 years later, he got fired and then he started making weird, violent threats against the company I work for on Facebook. His mental state had clearly deteriorated. At that point I blocked him and reported it. Haven't heard anything about him since. I don't know what any better boss could have done for him. The guy was a paranoid, angry prick who thought the entire world was out to get him. I really think that no amount of good leadership could have made his career trajectory anything other than a self-destructive mess. There's a lot that a boss can do to help their employees grow their careers and skills, but there's only so much you can do with some people. We had good leaders. We had sensitive colleagues. We had second chances and honest conversations. Gary still managed to duck himself over. It took them years and years, but they eventually fired him. And it's his fault. I should have reported him a dozen times over for the stuff I witnessed early in my career, but I was too young to realize that it wasn't normal workplace insanity. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. If you enjoyed watching this video, leave your thoughts in the comments below.